Hi, everyone. I just want to welcome everyone to this UAlbany alumni panel on careers in sports communication. Before we get started, I'm just going to do a couple notes on housekeeping here. So first off, we are recording, and the kind of structure of the panel will be, we're going to do about 45 minutes of talking to our three guests today, and then we'll switch to a Q&A. So if you have a question, instead of typing it in the chat, please use the Q&A function. It should be on your on your little toolbar there at the bottom, right on the bottom right-hand corner there. And that's about it. So I'd like to welcome our panelists today. We have three really interesting alums with impressive resumes in this field: Tara Belinsky, Qadeer Morgan, and Erin Pellegrino. And I'd like to thank, of course, the Alumni Association for organizing this, as well as the Albany Sports Business Organization. This is a Great Dane student group that's focused precisely on this industry and helping students kind of make their way into it. So check them out, please. And I see all our panelists here. Thanks for joining us, everyone. So I guess we'll just get started. I think I covered all of the housekeeping. I'm still there's some more information about ASBO in the chat for everyone if they are interested. All right, so thanks Qadeer, thanks Erin, and thanks Tara for being here. So really general question to start off. What drew each of you into this line of work? And I'll leave that open to whoever. You know what? Let's do this alphabetically by last name. So Tara, you're up first.
All right, let's do it. I guess when it comes to sports, I grew up playing sports my whole life, so it was something I was always involved with from the athletic side. I didn't really realize the passion that I had for impacting communities until I was actually a sophomore in college and visited the Tampa Bay Rays baseball team and shouted a few people there. Ended up being there on the day of graduation for a swim class. At the time, drowning was the #1 cause of death among children in Florida. They had brought players out to the graduation ceremony and they were congratulating them, awarding them with medals. And I was like, whoa, this is a full-time job? Like, you could actually do this? So from that point on, I really dedicated myself to not only learning about how I can use what I learned in the classroom, but also my experiences through internships and being a student athlete to make a career of it. And I'm here now and enjoying every day.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. I love hearing those stories about these experiences that really kind of shape our directions. And alphabetically, Qadeer, you're up next.
Yeah, so similar to Tara, I've also always played sports growing up, and I knew one day I wouldn't be able to play anymore. Knew I always wanted to be around it. I just love the family feeling that you get being around sports. And so for me, when I finished playing football at Albany, I started managing the basketball team. And it was a one road trip. I believe we were playing SMU, I think, down SMU. And David Vatz, I think his name is, he was there on the road trip, and he was the PR guy. And so I remember, I think we were like McDonald's, we stopped to get some food or something. And I talked to him, he was telling me about his job and what he had to do. And I thought that was so interesting. And then he said that if he had an opening next semester, I could apply. And so I applied, I got it. And honestly, there I helped with a lot of sports, women's sports, men's sports, lacrosse, basketball. It was a great experience, honestly. But at that point, I knew I was like, okay, this is something I really am more interested in, want to do. And for me, honestly, like, part of the reason why I was happy to be on this kind of panel is because, like, I remember going to career fairs at Albany. You know, there's a lot of great organizations that were represented there, but there was never any sports teams. And I was like, man, like, I wish there was like a sports team here, because doesn't matter what level or, you know, organization, I would just be interested to talk to them and get an internship or something. So that's why, you know, when Melissa reached out, I jumped on the opportunity, because, you know, anything I can do to reach out and help, you know, anyone coming after us, I'm happy to do that. So.
Great, thanks, Qadeer. Thanks. These stories are great. I love hearing these stories. And last but certainly not least, Erin, please.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo a lot of what Tara and Qadeer said. You know, I grew up playing sports, knew from the beginning that I wanted a career, that I was passionate about what I was doing. So I think from a very early age, I knew I wanted to pursue a career in sports. My arc within the sports profession has changed a lot. I've been working in sports for the last 22 years and started out very much on the X's and O's side of the business and have slowly moved into community impact. So there's been a lot of pivotal moments over the years that have redirected it. But I was so fortunate that when I was attending Albany, the Giants had their training camp. So I worked with the SUNY Albany football team as a statistician and an assistant special teams coach. And the summer before my sophomore year, Coach Ford, who was the head coach at the time, created an opportunity for me to intern in the public relations department at the Giants. And I didn't know very much about professional sports at the time, but I knew the X's and O's really well. And my first season, they went 12-4, home field advantage through the playoffs, went to the Super Bowl. I was like, sign me up. 4 years later, they went 4-12. Everybody got fired, and it all came full circle. But yeah, right from the beginning, I knew that professional sports was what I wanted to pursue once I got my first taste of it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, you guys have all kind of preempted the other question I had for you was, how were your experiences as athletes formative to your choices? And I feel like you've kind of touched on that already. And I think all of you have kind of hinted at one thing that I think, the students here who are listening are probably pretty interested in, right? This idea, like, what steps or opportunities in particular do you think were kind of have most attributed to your success? I think, Erin, you mentioned an internship, and I know that's something that our students are really kind of interested in. So I was wondering if each of you could talk a little bit more about whether it's specifically the internships you've done, how they've helped you kind of get to where you are today, or other experiences that have also been kind of really formative along the way once you decided that that's what you wanted to do. Maybe we could go in reverse order here unless someone has something really kind of burning they want to say. So Erin, please.
Yeah, sure. Qadeer had used the word family. And I think that that's something that really resonated with me as an athlete and working in especially collegiate sports and high school sports, that family mentality. And I think one thing I see working with collegiate student athletes now as a professional is they often diminish the skills that you get from being an athlete, your resilience, your teamwork, the way that you can grit things out and tough things out and show up. I think those skills set you up really well for the kinds of things you're going to need to have working in professional sports. I also think it's a really good connector. I mean, as much as the formal internships have certainly played a huge role in my career, it's also been people like Coach Ford, who I got connected with in an informal, an unofficial capacity, who leaned into my career and my life in a way that was super changing. So I think when you can connect with those type of mentors and people like us that are on the call that are truly willing to help you, you need to make the most of those opportunities and follow up with us and connect with us on LinkedIn and social. And I think it's all about networking, so that, because most of the time when opportunities are posted, it's almost too late. A lot of things that you see online are getting filled by word of mouth and by network. So I think it's really leveraging those skills that you build while you're in the athletics world to leverage your network and to make the most of those internship opportunities.
Absolutely. I see nodding from both Tara and Qadeer. Who wants to kind of build off of that and maybe speak of your own experiences interning and networking?
I can hop in here. I think networking is definitely huge, and I'm sure everyone on this call has heard that word a bunch of times, and it's something that's really important. And this organization, the Albany Sports Business Organization, actually gave me the opportunity to come to a chat in a lecture hall way back. I actually think it was my sophomore year. I just transferred to Albany, didn't really know many people, knew I wanted to work in sports. And we had John Berger and Chris Pridey. Erin, I'm sure those names are very familiar to you. They had came and spoke to the group, and I had my resume printed out and gave it to both of them, both incredible guys. Chris is still with the team. John is now with the NFL. And I remember everything. I stayed in contact with them, got my resume in the hands of Allison Stangaby, who is the VP of Community Relations at the Giants, and was able to get an interview and got the internship. And after I was hired full time, Chris Pridey comes to my desk with the resume that I handed him the first time that we met and just congratulated me. So you really never know who you're going to meet, when you're going to meet them, but always being prepared to capitalize on those opportunities are huge from the networking standpoint. I think internships are extremely important. We have a great education here at Albany, and it was something I was afforded to get a bachelor's and master's in, and being able to apply that to real world experiences is really what teams, organizations, employers in general are looking for, especially with everything being so competitive now. So being able to, again, network, speak with your professors. If you're interested in sports, the Albany Athletic Department is, open door policy over there, and they're always interested in speaking with students, not just student athletes, everyone. So I encourage you all to do that. And again, we're all on this call as well because we want to pay it forward because of everything that we've been afforded from Albany. So, staying in contact with us as well.
Great. Thanks. Yeah. Qadeer.
Yeah, I think Erin and Tara did a great job talking about the networking part. And they also mentioned internships, but I just want to dive in that part a little bit more. I've heard people reach out to me saying how much they want to work in sports. And, I'm sure Tara and Erin have heard the same thing, but you really have to be hungry for the experience. You have to really go out of your way to like get as much experience on your resume as possible. Like, obviously a lot of people want to work in sports, like, a lot of people want to be a part of it, but it's like, what makes you different, And so honestly, coming from Albany, like before the Rams, I was with the Bills, and SUNY Buffalo. We had a couple game day interns. I went to SUNY Buffalo, and I remember saying to myself, like, wow, this is cool that you guys can do this. Like, I wish at Albany I could have, helped out on game days with professional sports teams. And Buffalo actually has the Bills and the Sabres, so they actually, some of those students were getting double dip in 2 professional sports teams, and that's something that at Albany we just don't have a team that close to us. So, at the same time, you still gotta find your own way. So I would say, like, for me, like Tara, I was part of the Albany Sports Business Organization, and they had I think there was a UConn sports career fair we were invited to, and there was a New Jersey Devils career fair that we were invited to. I made sure to attend both. And at the New Jersey Devils career fair, they had like the Yankees, the Knicks, MSG, all these big time organizations, and those lines were super long. Everyone was in line for those. But then there was also like other tables, or like the Rockland Boulders, or like some minor league baseball teams, and no one was really at those lines. And so what I did is I, like everybody else, I stood in line with the big timers trying to, get my little 2-minute pitch in. But what I also did after that is I made sure to stop by the smaller organizations as well, as introduce myself. And unfortunately, the big time organizations didn't, have an internship for me. But Rockland Boulders is one of the teams, organizations that did. And that was my first internship out of college. And although it was unpaid internship, I was just blessed to leave Albany with internship ready to go as soon as I graduated. And then from there, I went to Octagon and to Cleveland Browns. But like I said, I just think it's important that, you want to work, everyone probably wants to work in sports, but it's like, what are you willing to do? What are you willing to sacrifice? Like my first internship, it wasn't paid. It was an unpaid internship. I did it for 2.5 months before I got to Octagon. And then Octagon, the Cleveland Browns, like both those internships were getting paid minimum wage. So it's like, on paper, it's like, yeah, it sounds great, but like, what are you willing to do to get there? And then you gotta think about it. Everyone wants that same internship. Everyone wants that full-time job. There's 32 teams in the NFL. There's 30 NBA teams. And at each level, there's like one person, one VP, one director, one manager, one coordinator for the most part, maybe 1 or 2 interns. So you do the math on that. There's only so many opportunities there. So you just gotta, reach out and put in the work to stand out.
Yeah, I think, and this is something I'm curious about, and I think maybe it would be interesting to the folks listening, is all of you have made some really interesting shifts in your careers, right? Whether it's kind of from more minor league teams to kind of major teams, or from organizations like the NFL outwards to something that is tied to that kind of work, but a little bit different. Could you guys talk a little bit about, once you get that foot in the door, right? And, we've talked, I think one of the themes here is really kind of the kind of sports grit, right? Bringing that to your not off the field job, say, right? So how, what goes into, finding those ways of shifting in your career, whether shifting up to a higher league, whether shifting laterally to something that's kind of co-present in that space, but not exactly with a team.
Yeah. I mean, I thought two things that Qadeer said that I think are really important for everybody to understand. When you start out in sports, most of the opportunities are unpaid. And when you start getting paid, you're paid very, very poorly for a long time. Like, it's just a reality of working in sports because so many people want to do it. I think what Qadeer is saying about going in at some of those, what you might not think are the sexier teams or the organizations, but getting that experience could very well be your door open into the larger leagues. I know at the NFL, we were very wary of you want people who have the expertise, that have the experience in the areas that, publicity or communications or marketing. You want someone who has that experience, not someone who's a huge fan. So I think that that's really important. And one of the most important things I've learned throughout my career is I think it's a mistake to look at it as a ladder. I think you should really think about your career more like a jungle gym, where sometimes you've got to go over or down to get up. Like, because you might find yourself, I mean, I was in a job at the NFL where I was scared of getting promoted because I hated what I was doing. You have to make a move, right? But you might have to make a lateral move. You have to start thinking about because your passions are going to change throughout your life. Your experience is going to change what you're interested in and what you're capable of doing. So I think it's good to be open-minded and not to be too stuck to everything has to be a promotion. Everything has to be a pay raise, because in sports, you're going to really limit yourself that way. It would probably be better to go into another industry, become an amazing lawyer or communications professional, and then come over 20 years into your career. So those are a couple things that I would offer.
Yeah, I would just add that so I've been fortunate to be with the Giants since I graduated. I started as an intern, made my way up to coordinator, and now manager. And I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is, like, being complacent will absolutely be the death of you. Qadeer hit on it. There's 32 NFL teams, 30 NBA teams. There are a million people that could be doing what I'm doing right now and that want to be doing what I'm doing right now. And for me to think that, oh, I've made it, I'm with an NFL team, is something that I will never let enter into my mind, because one, I love what I do and I want to continue to grow what I'm doing, whether it's, here with my department, it's a great environment where we have a culture where we're challenging each other and making sure that we're growing. The people in my department, I'm technically the baby, and this is my 4th season. We've had people in our organization in my department for over 30 years. So there's definitely, it's a testament to that family atmosphere that we've been talking about. And the other thing to keep in mind, and Erin did hit on it, is that there might have to be a time in your life where you do need to make a change. And you also need to recognize that, am I in the best situation to make me the best version of myself? For me, I have a twin sister. I have friends that are my age, and they've had, 5 jobs out of college, and they work in communications, they work in digital marketing, hospitality, everything like that. And it just wasn't the place for them. It wasn't something that was fostering a healthy environment when it came mentally, but also professionally. They had a ceiling put on them. So being able to recognize that and understand, okay, this isn't helping me move forward. I have a goal, I have a plan, which is always important to have plan A, plan B, plan C, and understanding that network that you are working to build is going to help you when you get to those points in your life where it's like, okay, what's next for me? Not asking for anyone to give you a favor or give you a handout, showing them, this is what I've done. This is what I feel like I can provide to someone, and understand that, like, I'm not coming to you with a problem that I have. I want to provide you with a solution. I think that's really important, and having that confidence in yourself, whether you're day 1 out of college and you may not have the work experience, but you're eager to get it, or if you're, 5-10 years down the line and you're like, I'm looking for a change, it's time for me to go somewhere new, challenge myself. So I think, having that confidence in yourself, being able to really lean on your experiences and finding people that are like-minded to you is really important. And complacency is a thing that I've seen people that have it, and it's not great for themselves, but also for the people around them. So understanding that what you're doing is going to impact your own life, but also everyone around you as well.
Thanks. Qadeer, anything you want to add to?
Yeah, just a little bit. I think Erin made a good point about the jungle gym thing. Like, for me, I played I played basketball growing up. Then I started playing football in college. I worked in baseball after college. Not the biggest baseball fan, but I was just so hungry for experience that's where I ended up. Like I said, I was unpaid, so I knew I didn't want to do that for too long. And then unfortunately landed an internship at Octagon, which the first 6 months I was doing global communications, which I originally thought I was going to be helping the players because they have a lot of big time players that they represent. And so I quickly learned I was on the corporate side. And so I was more working with the brands, which, it was still cool, but it wasn't what I thought. And then my internship was over, and I'm the type of person where similar to like me leaving college, like I'm always about like, all right, what's next? Not necessarily saying that I'm looking for my next opportunity, but like, I don't ever want to be in a situation where I'm just like, all right, internship's over. I'm just at home twiddling my thumbs. So like for me, it's like, okay, when my internship was wrapping up at Octagon, I applied for another one, and it was actually in consulting. It was consulting on BMW, something called Ultimate Driving Experience. You kind of go across the country with these activations. And so that's something that I also never thought I'd be doing. But it was just like, okay, well, I'm still in sports. I'm still at a sports marketing agency. Let's see where this takes me. Maybe consulting could be my future. And so I did that for about 5 or 6 months. And then the opening for the Browns, they had an opening for their internship. I applied and I got it. And then once I got to the Browns, that's when I realized, okay, this is where I want to be. I want to be in sports team, right? Because at first you just want to work in sports, sport, there's so many different layers of sports, right? There's teams, there's agencies, you can do coaching, PR, there's so many different departments. But when I got to the Browns, that's when I alluded to earlier with the family thing. Like when I got to Cleveland Browns, I'm okay, this is a one big family, right? And so you feel it too, because like, if you win, the whole organization is all happy. Everyone's smiling, see Tara's laughing. She knows what I'm talking about. If you're winning, everyone's laughing, good mood. If you lose, it's like, not much laughing, not much joking or whatever. But that's the beauty of it, because you go through everything together. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, and honestly, I have to be honest, like my manager at the Browns, they always told me like, hey, there's a 9% chance at the end of this internship, you will not have a full-time position. That was just more reality because, like you said, in this industry, people have to leave for, a job to open up. And so they're just being realistic, like most likely at the end of this internship, no one's going to leave. So the whole time it's okay, I'm working hard just so that if something else opens up another internship or another organization, a full-time organization or job, I can, they can speak to my manager, they can say I did a good job. So, and fortunately enough for me, a Bills had an opening and I landed there. Now, so I want to also go back to what Erin said about, you can't look too much about moving up everywhere, because I became a coordinator at the Bills. There was another coordinator there with the same title, but because she was there before me, she was higher on the ladder. There was a manager, a director, and a VP. So I was the 5th person. So realistically, I could look and realize in terms of promotions, like some people have to either leave or get bumped up for me to get my bump that I wanted. So instead of getting into like, okay, like what do I have to do to get promoted? What do I have to do to get promoted? Like I went there with the intentions of, okay, how can I just make the most of this opportunity, work as hard as I can? And maybe my next, maybe my promotion or my next bump might be with a different team, which ended up happening. But it happened organically instead of me trying to like, trying to get frustrated with not getting promoted or trying to do everything I can to get promoted, because, that can get frustrating. Sometimes, every team is different, some teams just don't promote as often as others, so, but yeah, I'll leave it at that. But yeah, I think you have to jump around a little bit to figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, I think what everyone's saying here, there's a lot of really useful advice here, right? Of making sure your view at your goal is broad enough and kind of narrow enough at the same time, right? Being open enough to different experiences, knowing that you have to kind of, again, the jungle gym metaphor is a really good one. I have 2 very young kids. I spend a lot of time on the playground. It's exhausting thinking of that jungle gym metaphor, but I get it. And I think it's a really good way of thinking about building one's career. And we've talked a lot about kind of getting there, right? Getting into this field, which is what competitive field, like most others, right? Limited spots. But maybe, each of you could kind of walk us through what your typical day at your job is, as typical as a day might be. And, at the same time, tell us, what is the most exciting thing about your job, right? At the same time as giving us kind of like the typical kind of rundown.
I can start with this one. Right now, we're in season. We're actually on a string of back-to-back home games, heading to London next week, then a home game after that. So it's a little bit, I would say, almost organized chaos. And you have your day-to-day. For me, being in community relations, something that I really enjoy is having direct contact with our fans, whether they're reaching out saying, "Oh my gosh, we love you so much," or "We have a fundraising event coming up. Is there any way that you could support?" Or, unfortunately, a loved one of mine is struggling in the hospital right now. Is there anything that you can do? So we get a wide range of messages, whether it's letters, emails, phone calls, that we're able to directly respond. I think something that I've been able to learn is that I'm Tara Belinsky, but I'm part of the New York Giants organization. So they're getting a response from the New York Giants. I don't sign anything with my name. It's always the Giants. So understanding that I'm part of something bigger, and we've all referenced this, I'm part of a family. It's a very well-known family to people all over the world, but I think that it's something that I really take a lot of pride in, is being able to communicate directly with our fans. So that's something I know I'm doing every day. In season for players, Tuesday is our day in the community. So we'll have a different event, if not multiple events on that day, with players throughout that. And it's something that we really enjoy. And it's nice because, we're not really sitting at our desk every day from 9 to 5. It's a lot of moving around. We're working with every single department, whether it's sponsorship, digital, player engagement, communications, everyone, which is something that I really enjoy about being in community, because you not only get to interact with everyone, but you get to learn from them as well. So, we talk about getting like broader experiences. In my role where I am, yes, I'm in community, but I'm also almost diversifying in everything that's going on in the organization. And so getting out in the community is really something special to me. I think that it's important for our guys. We always try and get to know them as people. So when we do have those opportunities, their time is meaningful. We're in the process of organizing a visit to an American Cancer Hope Lodge, and we're going to find players that have had some kind of experience, whether it's through their family, and connecting them with patients. So I think that's something really important to us. And then just making sure that in season, we're on a tight schedule. You have to be efficient with your time. You have to have a sense of urgency. You have to be ready to do what you have planned. And I've said this before, but many times we're on plan C. But if people think we're on plan A, I am fine with that, as long as everything is running smoothly. So it's definitely a thrilling environment. There's a lot of adrenaline moving. Having that positive energy is really important. And there are those day-to-day tasks you're always going to have. But the beauty of sports is there's also going to be something different every day that you can come home to and, have those conversations. And there's something different that you could talk about. And it's really exciting to be a part of.
Great. Thanks. Thank you. Qadeer or Erin?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I think Tara said something important, especially in my job, like getting to know players as people first. We're in the same family, but I'm in PR, so it's a little different. So my role with the Rams is I really take care of like the players. So I handle the players PR, especially more of the bigger name players like the quarterback, Aaron Donald, Matthew Stafford, like those kind of guys. And so the thing with them is, they get a million media requests, right? And so my job is to help them, figure out what's best for them to do. There's times where it's up to them. Hey, it's on you, low priority. If you want to do it, that's great. There's other times where like production meeting kind of thing, which is basically a meeting with the broadcast team. So like this week, we actually play the 49ers on Monday Night Football. So like every week, whoever's broadcasting the game gets to sit down with head coach, defense coordinator, and like a couple of players off the record. And so that's why if you ever watch a game and you hear like the broadcast crew say a story, that's usually from that production meeting. And so something like that is something that they kind of have to do or need to do. So you got to know your leverage to the player. But my thing is, for me, is like, I never want to be looked at as the PR guy, right? I want them to look at me as Qadeer, the person. And I also do PR and I handle the PR, but it's not like, I don't want them to look at me and be like, oh, what do you want? Because like, honestly, like, in the NFL, like there's a drug test guy and he's there a couple days a week. And you could feel the stigma of him. You could feel when he's there, it's like, oh, the drug test guy, you know? And so my thing is like, I never want them looking at me like that. So, I talk to them about life, I'm around in the locker room, I'll talk to them, when they're getting treatment in training room, when they're eating, even when we're traveling, just about anything, NBA, basketball, current events, whatever. And then also obviously when it's time to talk about PR stuff, we talk about that. But it's almost like at that point, the guard is down and they don't, it's not like the guard, PR. So that's one of the important, I thought Tara brought up a good point about that. You want to get to know them as people first. For my role, I'm also responsible for credentials. So, to get to a game, you either have, Tara's laughing, you have to either have a credential or a ticket, so tickets more for fans, but credentials is more so you credential the whole broadcast crew, you credential the opposing team that's coming, we credential local media and any national media that come to the game. And so, like Tara said, like home games are definitely more of a grind than away games because you're the host, you're hosting team, you have to provide for the other team as well. When the game's over, you got to do transcripts for the opposing team. And so, so I do credentials and I'm in charge of just handling PR for the main players. So, like I said, my thing is, whatever your job is, you want to get to know players as much as possible as people first, because honestly, I see them mostly as people. Obviously, when the game day comes, I see them on the field and they're doing their thing. But I see them more just walking around, eating, getting treatment, getting massages, like. So to my like in our life, I don't look at him as like, oh, Matthew Stafford, the quarterback. It's kind of just Matthew Stafford, the guy, So that's how it is for me.
And I think that makes you better at your job. And I think that anybody who wants to work in sports, you have to put your fandom at the door because you can't be colleagues and asking someone to do work for you one day and then asking them for an autograph the next. Like you have to keep it on the level, keep it professional, which is really challenging for some people to do. So I'm confident, Qadeer, that really makes you great at your job. It's been really interesting listening to you two talk about that, having started my career in PR at the Giants, and then moving into community work, and spending some time at the NFL corporate office in between. I feel like I can confirm that working at a team is definitely the most fun. You have, that family environment, like Qadeer said, you're riding the waves of the wins and the losses. The hours are crazy. You work all the time. And in some of the organizations like the Giants, people really don't leave. So those positions can be, challenging to open up. I've really gone an arc with my career where, my position at Albany and my position at the Giants, I was one of, if not the first women in those roles. So there was a lot of dialogue about whether I was allowed to be there and what I was allowed to do. And I knew that as someone who was a first, there was a responsibility to make sure that I wasn't the last. So that going above and beyond is something I think you have to do in every role. One of the things I saw at the Giants that has really impacted what I do now is Tara talked about, you watch those moments when a player, a game, it changes someone's life. Just showing up early, just letting someone on a field, letting them meet their hero. I realized over time how much that mattered to me as I evolved as a person. It became more important to me to spend my time and my experience and my skills finding a way to use sports to give back. So I started looking for those jobs. I left the NFL to go to Sesame Street, very much with that in mind. And I love nonprofit work, but I need to be in sports. So when I ended up at the Women's Sports Foundation, where I am now, that was founded by Billie Jean King, and it's our mission is to help gain access to sports for girls and women, to help them reach their full potential in sports and life. And my title is, Vice President of Community Impact, and it's just perfect for me. It's not as sexy and fun as the stuff I did at the Giants or the 17 Super Bowls with the NFL. But every day I get to go to work and that's my focus. How do we create impact in the community today with money from partners, creating programs that put athletes into the community to encourage girls to play sports? As someone who grew up with older brothers, always was working in men's sports until I took this job a year ago, I really didn't understand how fortunate and rare my experience was that my father and my brothers encouraged me to play, that Coach Ford encouraged me to coach. that Pat Hanlon at the Giants encouraged me to write and to be in the locker room and to talk with the players and to be brave. So now I get to do that all the time. We oversee grant programs. We oversee our athlete programs. We have a huge gala in a couple weeks. That's a fundraising event where we bring in all the elite athletes from across the country to help raise money for more of those programs. So there's a lot of administrative work and grant programs and overseeing those kinds of things. Like I said, it's a little less sexy, but I sleep well, put my head down every night knowing that I did a hard day's work trying to help other people. And at this point in my life, that's what matters most to me.
That touches, I think, Erin, what you said, that it brings up a lot of kind of interesting questions that I'd like to ask all of you if we had all the time in the world about the challenges you all faced in your careers. But also, one thing that I kind of noticed, and this is very explicit in your work, Taryn, obviously your work, Erin, and Qadeer, in going through your Twitter account, and I've gone through all of your Twitter accounts in my research here, your LinkedIn's, everything, try to do, my homework here, that, I think all of you recognize the power of sports in relation to social issues. And, and I think, Erin, you really kind of highlighted how you came to that. And I was wondering maybe if Qadeer and Tara, you want to pick up on that, on, how you came to see kind of sports as important in beyond the field, right? Beyond the field, whether it's empowering girls and women, whether it's race relations, whether it's social justice movements, how you got there, and what you think is unique about sports and communication as in an avenue to help do that kind of work. I hope that's not too big of a question.
No, I think it's a great question. And, for me with the Giants, two of the things that have really come to be over these last 2 years through COVID and everything going on with social justice. One of the first things in this past year, we just helped to fund and kick off 2 girls flag football leagues throughout New York State in Section 1 and Section 4 for high school girls. And the year prior, we had done it in New Jersey with the Shore Conference. And that was pretty surreal. One, just our team really championing that, but finding people in the community that were passionate about it. And I have an older brother, and he played football growing up. He was a quarterback, and I was like, always thought, wouldn't it be so cool if I was a running back and he just handed me off the ball? And it was always in my imagination. I never really thought of it as a reality. And now we're kicking off these leagues, and we have our players who, some of them have young girls as children, or they have younger sisters, and they feel really passionate about it. And I think it's not that someone can't do something, it's just they haven't seen someone do it before. So being able to show people you can do it, even if, for me, I saw my brother doing it, but I didn't think I could do it. But now, I'm part of those moments where it clicks for those girls. It's like, oh, I can do that. I know how to run. I know how to catch a football. I can pull a flag. And they can also be part of a tackle team as well. So I think empowering, girls and women in sports is huge. And that's being done through a professional football team, a men's game and a tackle game, but it's still, finding those similarities. And I think that's the beauty of sports is you look in our locker room, we have guys from all over the country, all over the world that grew up in different towns, had different families, different upbringings, but they all come together as one team every single day as part of one organization with a common goal. And everything that's going on outside the locker room is noise that we don't listen to. So I think that's, something that has rubbed off on me being part of this organization. And when it comes to social justice, we've helped to further support an existing, it's like through the New York City Police Foundation and the NYPD, there's a unit of dedicated police officers to cities like Far Rockaway, Queens, which has a lot of gang violence, and Harlem and Manhattan has a lot of gang violence, and they assign a unit of officers, and they work with the New York City Department of Education and schools in those cities to identify boys and girls that have, are at higher risk of being recruited into gangs because they have a family member that's been incarcerated or someone who's currently in a gang. And they're creating relationships with police officers and those children, but also their families, and using flag football as, that connecting piece. but it's really providing educational support, family support, resources to make sure that these kids are getting the best education possible for the best future possible. So those two things have really stuck out to me personally, being with the team. The Giants have an incredible history out in the community, and I know Erin has been a part of a lot of it. And so, me now being able to do that and make that impact is really special, especially when it comes to, girls and flag football, but also improving police community relations as well.
Fantastic.
Wow, how am I supposed to follow that up? That's great. Honestly, for me, like my first taste at it was just understanding the impact of sports and what it can mean in the community was when I was in Buffalo. This is actually during COVID, like Tara was mentioning. And, in Buffalo, we actually split up the player duties we had 5 people in an apartment, so we split up five segments equally. So actually, when we signed Josh Norman, I was assigned him. And for those who don't know, Josh Norman in his prime, he was kind of more of a outspoken player, very talented player, but spoke his mind, talked a lot of trash on the field, So when we were getting him, and at this point, he was kind of a little past his prime. So, it could be difficult in a different kind of way because in his mind, he still thinks he's prime Josh Norman. So I wanted to take the task on, and but this is during COVID, and so we were still kind of, my first time meeting him was actually when he had already arranged to meet with the mayor of Buffalo, and he hadn't even moved to Buffalo yet. He was just he was doing the 6th city tour with Demario Davis from the Saints, and they're visiting a bunch of different cities and meeting with a bunch of different mayors, and just about stopping police brutality, unity, social justice. And honestly, I was like, I wanted to go because I knew I handled him, but like hearing him speak with the mayor and with the community, like it showed me like, wow, okay, like I didn't realize how much power he really has with his platform. And that was one of his biggest messages, is trying to use his platform to make change. And obviously they get, because I think he was on Dancing with the Stars, and so their platform, they can do a lot of things with it. There's a lot of fame comes with being an NFL football player, but in this moment, he wanted to focus on using his platform to talk about unity, social justice, and stuff like that. So that was my first stint of it. And then that same year, 2020, that was kind of election year. And so I think in NFL, they made a big step towards voting. And so, that's another thing. You saw players using a platform towards voting. And honestly, like, I'm a Democrat. I think a lot like a lot of players, but there was one player I did have who honestly, like, I remember because at this point we're doing everything through Zoom, through media. And so I remember he was scheduled to speak with media, and I was talking to him, prepping him before, and I didn't think too much of it. And then he kind of started venting about like, he's like, why does everything have to be about go vote? And basically everything he was saying, long story short, was basically like, I think he votes the other, he's a Republican. And so I was thrown off guard because I'm just assuming that, everyone in the NFL is a Democrat and everyone wants to vote for, Joe Biden at the time. It didn't even occur to me that an NFL player could want to, I guess it was naive in me, but like, you just didn't see that from the locker room. Like, you didn't see that energy. And so when he came to me with it, it kind of threw me off guard. But in that moment in time, I had to separate my personal preference from what, at the same time, I need to be his PR guy, even though we have different, beliefs about that politics at that point. I still need to be his PR guy. And if that's what he wanted, that's what he believes. Okay, how can I help him prepare his message to the media so that it doesn't become a big firestorm and it doesn't become a clickbait headline? And so that was my first time kind of like, okay, wow, this is something we don't see eye to eye, but that doesn't mean I can't still do my job and help him. He still needs my help, So that was my first experience, also realizing, he has the same platform as everyone else. He should be able to use his platform the way he was. And we ended up coming up with something that, got its point across without making, a big headline. But yeah, you really get to understand like how important the platform is. And I think within the last couple of years, players started to realize that.
Yeah, great. I think we're hitting a time where we're going to shift to Q&A. I had a couple of lightning round questions for each of you to kind of give you like 30 seconds to answer something. But I think one of them about kind of the practical advice. I mean, I think there's so much that you've given us in terms of kind of practical advice. So I'm gonna do the lightning round, one question, and then we'll go over to audience questions because I see that there's quite a few in there. And this is, if you could have a do-over in your early career, right? Would you have taken the same path? Right? Is there anything that you would do differently? than you have done. And I think that kind of touches on the advice you might give to the students listening. And this might be a tough question, but it's what we're here for. We're here for asking tough questions.
I think I would have.
Anyone want to take
I was gonna say, I
stab
think
at
I
this
would
question?
have. I would have had everything go the same way, but I wish I would have, told myself more often, like, everything will work out the way it's supposed to be. I really blew
100%.
things up and I was like, oh my God, this is the end of the world.
Yes.
But it's all gonna be okay. If you work hard enough, you have the right people around you, you're going to end up where you're supposed to end up. And I know that's like a cliche, but believe it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I wasted so much time worrying about promotions and raises and having a chip on my shoulder about this should be going faster, I deserve more, whatever. And then things happened really fast. And there was just no reason to spend all that time worrying about it. What Qadeer said about you go into a job, you do your best job, you focus on that, you appreciate that, you be grateful for it, and it will lead to great things. I think that is 100% true, Tara.
Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't change my path. I actually ended up taking a semester off between when I played football and started managing a basketball team. So honestly, if I could do it over, I probably would have started interning a little quicker, but ended up in a good spot either way. And one last thing I want to say really quickly, like all of us work hard and everyone in this Zoom, I'm sure works hard. But at the same time, I have to be honest, it does take a little bit of luck, right? It does take someone taking a chance on you, right? And what to do with that is the most important thing. Like, I was working hard at Octagon, but if the Cleveland Browns, if they went a different direction, that doesn't mean I didn't work hard. It just, that wasn't the right opportunity for me, but maybe it could be with a different team or with a different league. So my last point I want to make is don't be discouraged if you get rejected from an internship, right? You have to have the mentality of, that's fine. What's the next one? Like you cannot let that affect you. You cannot look at, obviously you can always reach out to them and say, hey, what can I do better? How can I interview better? Or how can I change my resume? Or what are you looking for? You can ask them their feedback, but don't take it too personal if you get rejected for internship, because the next one might be right around the corner, And so I just want to keep that, people keep that in mind as well.
Great, fantastic advice. So I see that we have quite a few questions in the Q&A, and Melissa Samuels is here to join us to read those off for us. And then, so Melissa, what do you have for us?
Yeah, we've got a lot. So yeah, we'll get started. Aiken asked, how did you separate yourself from other candidates throughout your journey to where you are? What did you do to differentiate yourself from the pack?
I would say internships is huge. A resume is, that starting point, but keep in mind that is a piece of paper that someone could look at for 5 seconds or maybe 30 seconds. And when you get that call to have an interview, that's where, wheels start to go in motion. And, being yourself, if you try to be someone else and then you get the job and they're just like, this isn't who I thought I was hiring, is not the way to go. And you almost kind of feel like you're having imposter syndrome while you're there. So the biggest thing for me is, you need to have a good working relationship with the people that you're interviewing with and being yourself. And also, interviewing them as well. Are they a good fit for me? I know it's tough when you're in that role, lower down as an entry level, but try to get as much of a well-rounded, experience to that interview process so the best decision for you.
I think, we've made the point a couple times that once you get to working in professional sports, working in sports, you're with such a small group of people that are so incredibly talented and hardworking. Those things by themselves I don't think will often set you apart. In my experience, honestly, some of the things that matter the most is, can people trust you to do what you say you're going to do? Are you reliable? Are you kind? Are you doing the right things? Something I think that people underestimate about sports is how small the industry is. Everything you do will follow you everywhere you go. I am still in touch with almost everyone I interned with my first year at the Giants, and they almost all still work in sports, and we help each other all the time. Now, if I didn't show up, if they couldn't count on me, if I did spiteful things, and we certainly had colleagues that did those things, but they weed themselves out, because then when you're leaning on your network, you don't help those people, So I think the things I would talk about the most is like being authentic is super important. You can't fake who you are with these kinds of hours and the kind of stress that you're going to fake. So being yourself, but also being kind, doing the right thing, and being reliable. Those are things that are really going to set you apart in the long run, even though it sounds pretty simple and cliche.
Yeah, and really quickly, like I think they said they had a great point about being yourself. Like I could speak on my own interview process, going from interning with the Browns to full time with the Bills. I was a finalist. I was going against one other person, and they had us do a final project where we pretty much had to make a bio of like a draft or a quarterback that was coming up in the draft. And honestly, like after I got the job, they told me like honestly, like the other guy had a better bio than you. So I'm like, why did you hire me? And they told me like they liked my personality better. Like, don't be afraid to be yourself. Now, obviously, you still want to be professional, but like, don't be afraid to show your true self in the interview, because your personality, like, you know what, I want to be around this guy. You know, like we can, you know, help him out a little bit, get him up to speed. But this is the kind of energy I want to be around. You know, because we're around these coworkers a lot. You know, you get in around 7:30, 8 o'clock. You know, you're there till like 6:30, sometimes 7 if it's a home. You're almost clocking 11, 12-hour days. And it might not feel like it because, you know, you're doing what you love and you're running around, but like, that's a lot of time. Then like I travel with the team. So like you're on a road trip, you know, so it's like you're around, honestly, sometimes you're around your coworkers more than your own like family. So they want to be around people they really like. So just don't be afraid to be yourself, but like obviously you want to stay professional, but like show your personality in those interviews if you can.
All right. Next question. Matt asks, have you had experiences unrelated to this industry that have really helped you excel in your career?
I'll take this one. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You got it.
No, go ahead. Go for it.
Okay. So my senior year, second semester, I actually had a crazy semester. I was trying to graduate on time. I was interning with the communications department, but I was also actually working with this group home. I think it was called St. Catherine's in Albany. And honestly, like I just wanted to make some money. But I was working with these kids who had some troubled past, who had some rough childhoods. And honestly, like that changed my life, honestly, because I never experienced, I never fathomed growing up like that, you know, with those kind of circumstances. And so honestly, like this doesn't sound kind of crazy, but like dealing with some of the players is kind of how like I dealt with some of those kids in the sense that because like there's like, especially like bigger star players, they could be moody at times. They could be times where, you know, they don't want to do certain things, but you have to know you have to meet them where they are, right? You have to understand, okay, this is where they are. I got to meet them where I can't force them to do anything. And some of these kids, they wake up, you know, one of the kids, he would wake up and curse you out first thing on his mind. But you soon realize that's not him cursing me out because he's mad at me, Qadeer. It's just, that's in his mind, that's his way of saying what's up. And it wasn't personal. And so just taking a step back and be, okay, this is how I got it. For this kid, this is what he needs. I got to meet him where he is. For another kid, he might say, hey, good morning, Qadeer. How you doing? Like, okay, that's where he is. So just understanding like, okay, everyone has different background as to how they got where they are, and just meeting where they're at. And you have to treat everyone, you have to meet them where they are. So that group home experience, and I actually spoke about that in my Octagon interview. And my boss at the time told me like, that interview, that story about you speaking about the group home really opened her eyes and changed the way she looked at everything and looked at me. And so, like I said, just be authentic. And, you know, because who would have thought that working in a group home would help me get a job at Octagon, a sports marketing agency. You know, I honestly, I didn't have that much experience at the time, so I had to speak about it. And it had nothing to do with sports, you know, but just talking about people, right? At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. So.
Yeah, makes sense. You're the sum of your experiences, right? And you bring that with you no matter what career you go into. So Alexander asks, how would you suggest applying for internships in sports when you don't have any prior experience? Kind of back to that internship question.
I think that if you don't necessarily know what you want to do yet, we just like started posting internships or just game day staff or like event staff. So that gives you an opportunity to learn a little bit of everything in a short period of time. If there's like an identified space that you really want to work in, say it is PR for a team or community relations, and you're trying to apply to a job, see if there's a way that you have some type of networking connection, because as much as experience is important, someone knowing who you are is also important. And if they can, you know, be that person validating you or referencing you and recommending you, that also goes a long way. I think that's something really important. We've been working to really build a pipeline for us when it comes to our DEI committee, and having that word of mouth is almost, more important than like, all right, this person doesn't have the strongest resume, but I've heard from 4 people that they've had experiences with, this is a person that you should hire. And, like Qadeer said earlier, it takes a little bit of luck too, someone taking a chance on you. So going back to it again, networking, make sure that people don't just know what you do, but who you are is really important.
Anybody else? All right. Someone asks, what are the greatest rewards you've experienced in your career?
You want to go, Qadeer? I mean, the list is long. It's been a really rewarding career. Some really exciting moments, Super Bowls and things like that. But I think the most rewarding moments for me have come when I've been empowered to create change with someone else through my job. So, being with the Giants at 9/11, moving on, working at Rise, which is focused on race relations during, Black Lives Matter protests, and really finding ways to leverage my skills and experience to see those moments when we watch the light bulb click. You know that you changed someone's heart or mind. You know that this is a day that they're going to remember forever. I've been really fortunate to have quite a few of those. I'm really grateful for all of them.
Okay. All right. John asks, how important is mobility and openness to relocation in the industry? Does it become easier over time?
If you're looking to work in sports, be open to working anywhere in the country. Like we've said this whole time, it just takes one chance. The sports world is very, very small once you get into it. And, I was looking at a number of jobs coming out of college, going into it with the mindset that, yep, maybe I would relocate to Florida, even though my entire family is in New York, and understanding that that was a jump that I was going to have to take if it was going to get me to where I wanted to be. So I think you have to be open-minded if you want to work in sports, and understanding that you relocating might be for a 6-month internship, and there is a risk that has to be taken, but the rewards can really work. And just having something like that kind of experience on your resume is a reward within itself.
I'll just add to that, like myself, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I went to Albany, which is like 2.5 hours away from the city. But then one of my first internships, I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. Never thought I'd be in Cleveland, Ohio, right? That one in Buffalo, New York. Never thought I would be in Buffalo, New York. And then fortunately enough, I'm in LA now. And although it's a big market city, I don't have any family out here. Honestly, I went to a boarding school in high school. So from 14 years old, I've been used to being away from home. So I think that's helped me a lot, being able to bounce around. And because my sister, she also works in sports. But that's something like she went to the same school from kindergarten to high school. She went to North Carolina for college, but she came back home afterwards. And that's something for her. She admitted, hey, I can't do that. You got to know yourself too. She can't bounce around, right? And so she found her lane in sports. But for me, I like Tara said, I'm like, all right, well, there's opportunity, I'm there, right? I'm willing to pick up and go to the next city if that's where the next opportunity is for me. So you have to be open to that. And if you aren't, then it's gonna, the opportunity is gonna they're gonna come and go real quick, So if you really want to work in sports, you have to be open to that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think you have to be open to moving. I think it's helpful to understand the different markets too. So for example, when I was working at the NFL, my husband was working at the 49ers. And we talked about who was going to move where, like New York and San Francisco, LA. Those are markets where you have lots of sports teams, but you also have lots of organizations. New York has most of the headquarters, the Women's Sports Foundation, Rise. Like, in some markets, you're going to have a lot more options than others. So for my husband and I, for our lives to work, like he now works for an MLS soccer team, we can make that we can both pursue our careers in a market like New York because there's so many options. If we were in a place like Cleveland or Buffalo, that might be more limited. So sometimes it's good to balance your life decisions, or you're going to have to balance your life decisions around your career, but thinking about where you want to live can be a big part of that too.
Makes sense. Okay, this next question, Tara, is more for you because one of our students wants to know about getting your master's degree. You know, you opted for that. Did you feel that master's helped you in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I was fortunate to do the BA/MA combined program at Albany. When I transferred after my freshman year, I had that extra year of eligibility and wanted to finish that eligibility, but also didn't want to spread my undergrad over 5 years. I thought, you know, that wasn't as an efficient use of my time, and was able to get in at the point where I could start my graduate courses as an undergrad. And I'll be honest, at the beginning, it was daunting at first. I was like, am I really ready to do this? But the professors, the whole communications department, were really rooting me on and wanted me to succeed. There was a basketball player at the time as well that was doing it, and also a soccer player. And we all kind of were in similar classes and understood how tough it was on our schedules, but understood that it was going to pay off in the long run. And I thoroughly enjoyed the master's program. Honestly, I love the bachelor's, but master's is so much more fun because you're able to really tie in to what's going on in your classes and to what you want to do in your life. So for me, it was leadership in sports. And I dabbled in some digital media as well, but there was one class, and I had Pete as a professor, and I don't know if this was his class, but there was one where I did like a case study on Michael Scott's leadership style from The Office, and just had the best time doing that. And I was a lot of fun doing it, but I also learned a lot and was able to self-reflect on, you know, the different types of leadership styles that there were and how I was able to really implement that into my life. So I think that if you have an opportunity to pursue your master's, I could say nothing but good things for the Albany's master's program. The professors are great. And I can say that without Pete, you know, scolding me or anything like that, because he's not my professor anymore. So I don't have to say the nice things, but it was definitely, sorry about the sirens, a learning experience for me. And I'll mute now because there's probably a fire.
Okay, well, we'll move on. What advice would you recommend or give to someone who wants to pursue sports broadcasting play-by-play? Is that something any of you have experience with and can speak to?
Yes, I started out thinking that I wanted to do like radio calling, play by play. I was a statistician for my varsity high school football team and did the stats for Albany as well. So I think a starting place for that is you've got to really know your X's and O's. I get to the Giants, I'm super stoked. I've got my gig at WFAN and it's coming to us live at halftime, Erin Casey at the time. And I just froze. Like, I absolutely hated it. I talked like I didn't know the English language. I just realized that like I'm a behind the scenes person. I freeze on camera. I don't like being in front of the camera or being like the person that's doing that. But I think the way that you should practice at home when you're watching games, practice all the time, like say it out loud, because that's part of it, is just working that muscle. Having a really, really firm grasp on the X's and O's of the game. And then when you get the opportunities, and I would recommend go to your volunteer with your local high school team or your local college, go and try to get some experience doing it to make sure that you like it. And then try to leverage that into doing it with the larger teams, because they hire people every single game. They hire, like Tara was saying, there's tons of game day positions. I don't think I would have survived my time interning without the Giants, without those paid positions there. Well, ESPN and NBC Sports and all those people, they hire 10 people to come in every game to take stats and help with all the play-by-play and the commentating. So I think there's a lot of jobs there. Get the experience, try it on your own, and then try to go out and do it with another company is my advice.
All right, Aster asks, what are some good skills, and I think these could be hard or soft skills, that you think will help students make a career out of this in the sports industry?
I know that, we're part of a communications panel right now, and we definitely learn about listening in our courses here, but I think that's something really important, especially something that I had to remind myself to do when I was going through the process of, trying to get those internships and everything. It was hard not to think me. Like, I'm trying to tell everyone everything I possibly can. And Qadeer mentioned like my 2-minute pitch and everything like that. And I still get in the habit of sometimes like making, like, I'm introducing myself to someone and they say their name, but I'm almost thinking like, all right, I don't want to mess up my own name. So I'm thinking, oh, I'm Tara, and then I don't even get their name. So just like, not trying to rush things and really having those interpersonal connections with people that comes from listening. Because if you're listening to someone, you're able to, really communicate with them, not just verbally, but also through your body language as well. You can tell when someone does not want to be in a conversation. And I'm sure Qadeer and Erin have all experienced it with players. Like, there are some guys that will just shake their head and be like, yes, no. And like, you feel that. And if you don't know who that person is, it's going to be easy for them to react to you that way. But if you genuinely are listening to them and want to know someone, like, that's important as well. People are going to remember more how you make them feel sometimes than what you say to them, especially when you're making a first impression.
I think to that end too, writing, understanding, being a good writer and understanding the nuance of how to write a good, clear email, how to write a creative story, how to write an editorial piece and be really direct. Those skills are so valuable across so many different departments in sports, and so many people don't have them. So I think if you can take the time to really hone those skills, you'll be a really valuable teammate to a lot of different people.
So we have a couple more questions about internships. How did you get your first one? What can I be doing even as a freshman to kind of prepare myself? I know you've all talked a bit about internships, but anything else that you can share on that subject that might help our students?
Honestly, just try to take advantage of what you can, do. Like I said, there's Albany. I think there's still what's called Albany Sports Business Organization, right? There's a club, right? Join the club, right? Through that club, they have events that, I believe they still do this, but like I said, they have events, they have other sports career fairs with other universities. So that's a start, right? And then, apply to the school internship program, try to help out as a manager from one of the sport, like just being around it, right? I think you can control that. And then, over the summer, it's, I don't know where you live, but then you can try to apply for some internships over the summer. Like I said, obviously Albany, we don't have any professional sports teams near us. So it's hard to do like game day internships or game day communications roles. But I would definitely start joining that club and also trying to intern at the school's communication department.
What about non-professional sports teams getting some experience there? Because you're right, Albany doesn't have a professional sports team, but we have a number of non-professional sports teams.
Yeah, and I think, Erin, you want to jump in here? Sorry.
No, I agree. I mean, I was just going to say that, for me, I got my whole start with the Albany football team. I didn't make any money for that. And that wasn't a formal internship. That was something that Coach Ford and I worked out because I was interested in learning more. And that was every single day, practice, films every weekend, traveling to games. I mean, there were times when that felt insane. Like, why am I doing this and not making any money? Well, then Coach Ford made a call to the Giants that completely changed my life. So I think you have to not be afraid to volunteer, not be afraid to step into those unpaid opportunities, as challenging as they are, because those are the things that might make you stand out and create those opportunities.
I would say it's fair to make the argument in some cases that experience at the minor league level can always be more valuable when you're getting started than at, the major league level, because when you're working for a minor league organization, you're doing everything from rolling t-shirts to like escorting VIP guests or, working directly in client services and things like that. and you may not be open to those kinds of opportunities if you're going to a very specific role with a very established organization. So showing that you can perform at that lower level and, you know, being able to adapt in those situations is something that is valuable when you're then ready to, you know, get into that entry level, maybe coordinator role, and they see that you've done everything from top to bottom and you're ready to perform at, you know, a higher level.
I think we're starting to run out of time, so maybe one last question. Someone asked, how did you stay determined to continue in this field, knowing that it's challenging to find a job, that the pay is low, that for women, it can be a particularly challenging field? What kept you all going?
Well, for me, I knew it's what I wanted to do, right? And I knew in high school, actually, I worked in construction with a family member, and I made great money, but I didn't love it. You know, I was always looking at my watch to see what time is lunch. As soon as lunch is over, I was looking at my watch to see what time was off the shift. So I know I want to work in sports. I knew exactly what I want to do in sports. So if you know what you really want to do, then you will be determined. And then it goes back to what I said earlier. You have to be open to getting, you know, rejected, right? You have to be okay with the fact that, hey, they went a different direction, and maybe it's nothing you did per se. It just maybe the other person had a connection that you didn't have, or maybe, you know, they said something in an interview that, you know, they liked, you know, and so it's not for you to go back to the drawing board and start from scratch, you know, maybe that just wasn't the right opportunity for you, right? So just understanding the process of it and staying patient, because I think Erin and Tara said earlier, like, you have to trust the process, and what is for you will happen.
Yeah, I mean, for better or worse, I was born extremely stubborn, which is not great a lot of the time, but I think in sports it's helped me. Billie Jean has an expression, she says a lot, that a lot of people, you have to see it to be it, meaning a lot of us need role models to think that things are possible. And I didn't really have that when I started because there weren't any women coaching or working in the positions in the NFL that I was pursuing. So I think that stubbornness helped me at the beginning, feeling like these boys aren't smarter than I am. I can do the same things that they can. This is ridiculous. Men and women fly on planes together all the time, that kind of thing. And then as I moved forward into my career, it became really important to me to pay it forward, like Tara said. So then it became a stubbornness about, I need to make sure that other young women can have an easier way, and that I can be part of those solutions for creating opportunities for other people. So I think it was a combination of, you can't take no for, an, you know, when there's going to be times that you can't control the situation, you have to move forward. But I think you have to maintain that confidence and persistence in yourself that you think you can do it.
I would say that there's a constant challenge working in sports and whatever you're doing. And that challenge is something that I look forward to because it gives me something to work toward. And that's always going to be the case. There's always going to be something, you know, that's could be right in front of me, but there's also going to be something that's down the road that I'm always striving to do. I think that something that keeps me determined is, you know, not only my family, that they are so supportive, and, you know, finding people to be your support system is really important when you're working in sports, because we've talked about it. It's long hours. It's not the glory of the pay that, you know, our finance friends are going to be getting. But they have to just understand that, you know, there are nights where I'm going to sleep early because I was in the office till 10 o'clock the night before, and them having that respect for you. But also, I'm very fortunate to be in an environment where, you know, my coworkers, where we refer to everyone as teammates. So my teammates want what's best as me just as much as they want what's best for themselves. And I'm very fortunate to be in that environment and understanding that we're pushing each other to be the best that we can be. And, you know, I feel like I found my purpose in the work that I'm doing, making sure that I'm using sports to help people and to connect people. And that's something that I'm very determined to do for the rest of my life, wherever I am. And it's hard not to get caught up in that every day, but taking a second to reflect and be like, all right, like today was a good day. Let's have another one tomorrow. So I think it's, you know, that thing of having the big picture, but also it's one step at a time. And I know those are contradictory, but that's something I definitely learned through COVID. It's like, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, what everything is going to be like. So taking it a day at a time while having that long-term goal is something really important to stay determined.
Great. Guys, thank you so much, Tara, Erin, and Qadeer, for sharing your experiences. It was great to hear. I just love the stories. I love hearing about the trajectories, how you guys think so deeply about what you do. And I'm sure everyone who's attended really appreciates it. So just like to thank the Alumni Association, ABSO, Melissa for organizing this, and you three for your time and your insight. And I think that's it, right, Melissa? I think that's our time for the night.
It is. Thank you all very much. And
Right.
I will be reaching out to all the students with the link to the recording of the webinar. And we'll be sharing that for those who weren't able to join us tonight as well. So have a good night, everyone. And thank you again so much to Tara and Erin and Qadeer. You talked a lot about paying it forward, and you're certainly doing that tonight. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good night, all.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was great.